you leading edge families and students for joining us this evening. I have our live stream kind of getting set up on my computer, so I'm just going to give it a second to make sure it fires up correctly. And then I'm going to go ahead and introduce everyone. So it looks like we are good to go on YouTube. So let me close that tab because no one enjoys an echo. All right, so welcome. If you're a Star Academy parent too, I saw you 5 minutes ago. Nice to see you again. Thanks for joining us this evening as we talk a little bit about the upcoming school year. If we've never met before, my name is Joe Wood. I'm Natomas Charter School's Executive Director, which means I work with all 5 academies. I also am a parent of a middle schooler, like all of you on this call. So understand the unique times of parenting in the COVID era. So I'm going to hand it over to Mrs. Burial.
Hello, I'm Laura Burial. I'm the Teaching and Learning Director, which means that I get to work with all of the students at Natomas Charter School. And so well, I don't have a leading edge student. I do have a student at PFAA who was just in middle school. And so I appreciate the middle schooler.
All right, and Dr. Ellis?
I'm Addie Ellis. I'm Student Services Director, and I too work with all 5 academies. Most of you know me from my various safety letters that I send out to you.
And of course, last but certainly not least, Mrs. Goldman.
Hi, everybody. I'm Amanda Goldman. Some of you know me as Miss G or Miss Goldman or Amanda, all good. I am the Academy Coordinator for Leading Edge. And yeah, I mean, I wish I could see you all, but I'm happy to see you all in the virtual sense.
Yes, it definitely is a little strange for us. We're presenting to blank rooms right now, but we know that you're there and we appreciate you being there. So I'm actually going to share my screen so I can bring up our slides here. Let me go into presenter mode. And fellow co-hosts, if you can just give me a little thumbs up on your computer screen. Yay, we can see the slides. That's the fancy way of making sure the slides are working. So, once again, thank you for joining us this evening. I know all of you are busy with summer and other things that are going on, so we appreciate you taking time out of your evening to join us. As we're gonna talk a little bit about what we know for the upcoming school year as of today. I hope you understand that everything we're sharing with you is our current information based on the current guidelines, all of which are subject to change, and we will promise to keep you informed throughout that entire process. I also want you to know that our goal is to get all the kids back to school. We desperately miss them. Every single one of us on this call, we became educators because we love working with kids and we miss seeing them. I also, though, know as a middle school parent, you're probably ready for them to go back to school. And, we completely support you in that as well. But we recognize that school serves a really important function. For kids, it serves a function of academic growth and social emotional growth and connectedness, but it also serves an economic function in our community. Our community cannot reopen until schools are able to reopen. And so while we're recognizing all of that, we want our reopening to also follow along with the public health guidelines so that we can reopen in the way that is the safest and healthiest for all of our students and staff. So I don't know about you, but this girl and this meme kind of represents my feelings about the upcoming school year. As both a parent and an educator, it's hard for us to figure out exactly what the coming year is going to look like. And we have 57 days until the first day of school, which on one hand is a little anxiety provoking because I know that's going to go by like that. On the other hand, it lets me breathe a little bit because I do know, why do I always cough on the leading edge calls? It's starting again. But so we all know, though, that we have some time in order to get ready for the upcoming year. So what's on tonight's agenda? So we're going to discuss our current information, which includes our latest guidance from the Department of Education, Public Health, and the Sacramento County Office of Education. These are our plans as of today. Our goal is to help you plan for the upcoming school year. And then our timelines and next step, we'll talk a little bit about what's going to happen in July and August as we move forward. So here's our framework for our thinking. So our guidelines will adjust based on the latest science. We were fortunate enough last week to have a call with the Sacramento County Public Health doctor, where she really sat down and walked us through each of the things that we're thinking about and helped us understand the guidelines that the county's put out and why it's so important. Ultimately, we will be guided by those public health experts. They're the ones in our community that are making recommendations based on the latest CDC guidelines. And ultimately, it's going to take all of us working together. So the importance of this collective safety. It's, in order to keep school open, we're all going to have to take an active role in making sure it can stay open. And the last piece that we're really planning with the full community. So you've been getting a lot of surveys and emails from us. We really appreciate that. Your feedback is shaping what we're going to do moving forward. Similarly, if you're a student on this call, yesterday you got an email from me to join one of our student leadership committees, and I would encourage you to do that. It's an opportunity to help get the school ready for the upcoming year. So back in May, we talked about a 4-stage plan for reopening. And this is going to be this school year, especially after talking to the public health doctor on Friday. I'm more and more convinced that this school year, as we watch what happens with COVID-19 in our community, we will have to flex between these different stages. And so our goal for the reopening of school right now is that we're probably looking at stage 2, hybrid learning. This is with physical distancing being required on campus. But if the coronavirus outbreak gets worse in our community, which unfortunately we do have an uptick in cases right now, we might be looking at having to go back to stay-at-home orders. If it gets better, which is what I think we're all hoping will happen, then we can go back to stage 1, which is really having everyone on campus. So speaking of surveys, our latest survey, we asked how you were doing as a community. And what we found is that overall students are really excited to come back to school, but there's also some students that have some concern. Both families and staff have some concerns about health and safety on campus. It's a little larger for families than it is for staff. Families and staff are both supportive of masks being worn by students. And most of our families are going to be able to participate in what's called the Screen at Home campaign. We'll talk about what that means in a second. But everyone's concerned about challenges created by shift-based schedules or even schedules changing over the year, right? How does this align with my carpool, daycare, split households, et cetera? And what we ask families is to let us know, based on what they know as of now, and we recognize that's always changing, what would you sign up for the first quarter of the school year? So that's basically the first day of school through fall break, which is on October 7th. And you can see from the pie chart that the majority of our families want kids to come back to school as much as possible. We do have about 13% of families that are interested in signing up for long-term independent study. So the sign up for independent study process would probably be quarter by quarter. We have a smaller group that are interested in transferring to PACT or VLA, that's our homeschool or independent study high school program. And we have another group that are really unsure right now. And I'm sure part of that goes back to, one, as a parent trying to understand, like, how much of a risk am I really taking sending my kid back to school? But then two, also trying to understand the format of what school might look like in the fall. So with that, and Mrs. Goldman's going to go into more detail on this, but I want to let you know that school-wide for all 3 of our site-based programs, we're really looking right now at a double days attendance model. If you happen to attend the Westlake call last night with Mr. Ike, you probably saw something very similar. But the idea is that students would be divided into 2 cohorts. One cohort would come to school on Mondays and Tuesdays. The other would come to school on Thursdays and Fridays. When a student's not at school, they're engaging in some sort of online distance learning, which Mrs. Goldman will talk a little bit about what that might look like at Leading Edge. Wednesday is an everyone learn from home day so that we can actually shut the campus down and do a deep cleaning between the 2 cohorts of students. And then the school day and after school part, you can kind of ignore for a moment. That's more for teachers. But the idea is that we have a third group. We're calling it our C group. These are the students that are choosing to be on independent study for the duration of the school year. So we have 3 guidance documents that we're working with right now. One from the California Department of Education, another from Public Health, and then a third from the County Public Health. Sorry, California Public Health is this blue one right here that says industry guidance. And then this is the one from the County Public Health. The good news is that they're very aligned. And so they talk about physical distancing needing to be really important, approximately 6 feet between students. The primary means of transmission of coronavirus is through respiratory droplets, which the best analogy I can think of respiratory droplets is if you watch someone who's ever smoked a cigarette or vaped, that cloud that comes out when they exhale, that's a visible way of seeing respiratory droplets. So the idea is to be far enough away that you're not exposed to each other's respiratory droplets. Face coverings are also very important. For the public health guidelines in Sacramento County, they're encouraged for TK through 5 and required for middle and high school students and staff. Hygiene protocols like washing hands, screening protocols at home and at school, so taking temperature, checking for a cough, that sort of thing, ensuring adequate ventilation, and having quarantine procedures in place. And really the phrase that is in all 3 of these documents is this idea of to the greatest extent possible. We're working with human beings. We recognize that. And so no one's gonna, get a detention for not wearing their mask. That's not what we're talking about. The idea is that, we're educating the students to understand why mask wearing is so important. Now, out of the 3 documents, the one that's most important for us to follow is the ones that are issued by SCOE and Sacramento County Public Health. So that's that light blue document. That document was developed with Public Health, the County Office of Education, and the 13 school district superintendents in Sacramento County. As a school in Sacramento County, we are required to follow the latest public health order. And so this particular guidance document was developed with what the public health department thinks coronavirus is going to do during the 2021 school year. There's some information around a screen at home campaign. There's some questions around sports and arts that we're trying to figure out. Because if you think about like basketball, for instance, it's hard to stay physically distanced during a basketball game. And it also talks a lot about students attending in shifts. We're going to be sending a follow-up email after this. And in the follow-up email, we'll be sending out some information, including a link to this guidance. We're also looking at international models along with county health. And so China, Denmark, Norway, Singapore, and Taiwan are 5 countries that have already reopened the schools and been able to keep them open. And when you look at what they've been doing, there's actually a link to a little research article there down at the bottom. Ultimately, it's about physical distancing, screening, hygiene, cleaning, and quarantine. So the things that we're talking about in our public health guidance as well. So that Sacramento County Public Health Guidance, this slide is my best way of taking a 36-page document and kind of putting it in one slide for you. But as a parent, these were some things that I thought would be highlights that you would want to know about. So first, this idea of a screen at home campaign. It's going to be important for everyone in Sacramento County to be taking their child's temperature before they go to school every day. This is a common practice in many of the countries that have already opened. We'll also be doing screening on campus as well, but we recognize, or the county health recognizes, that not every school has the capacity to do that and do it well with the volume of students that are coming. So screening at home is going to be important. As much as possible, having 6 feet of physical distancing between students when they're on campus. Having, they're calling general safety precautions, but things like washing your hand, making sure you're using hand sanitizer, that sort of thing during the school day. And then there's kind of 2 notes here. First, the yellow box, because of the need for social distancing, every child cannot be on campus at the same time, just physically impossible. And then their current recommendation is in the red box that at this time, schools will be required by Sacramento County Public Health to modify school schedules to limit the number of students on campus to achieve that physical distancing. Related to this was a question that came up a lot in our May meeting. And so when we met with the public health doctor on Friday, this is actually a question that we asked because we were very curious as well about, well, what's going to happen when a student is sick or maybe there's a student that is suspected of being exposed to coronavirus? What does this look like? And so, first of all, anytime there's a student demonstrating symptoms on campus, like a fever, respiratory issues, nausea, or diarrhea, they're going to be isolated to a separate place in our health office. The idea is that we're going to call every single parent contact or other contact on the emergency card for an immediate pickup. We don't want the student to stay on campus to limit the exposure that they may have to other students. And then we'll sanitize any places that the student has been in. Once the student has been picked up, our second phase is to call county public health and find out how we should proceed. And so they're likely going to engage in some sort of contact tracing. So if a student was sick on campus or was in class, they're going to ask, well, what students did that student interact with? And then they're going to follow up with those students and their families to find out if there's any other coronavirus symptoms or exposure going on in the community. There'll be some sort of community notification, but it'll be confidential. So something to the effect of, we had a student on campus who, and whatever the situation may be. And then what county health is going to do is they're going to really think about, based on the scenario, like, was this a sick student on campus, maybe spreading a virus? Did the student have a confirmed case, or was there a confirmed case in the household? They're going to make some recommendations around school closure. And so if the student exposure can be isolated to maybe one classroom or one particular cohort of students, then the closure might just be for that particular classroom or cohort of students. If though, let's say it's a student that's been all over campus and it can't really be isolated, or it's a student with multiple siblings in the household and they've been all over our campuses, then we're probably closing down the entire school. And the question that I asked is, I said, based on the current research, what's the closure time? Is it 48 hours? Is it 5 days? Is it 14 days? As of today, and based on the current research, the recommendation would be a closure of 14 days. So I share that for 2 reasons. One, as a parent, you should be prepared for a dynamic school year. This hopefully won't happen, but it could happen. The other piece is this gets back to why that screen at home campaign is so critically important. We are only going to be able to keep the school open if we work together to ensure that the school stays open. And so anytime a student's exhibiting a fever, they really need to stay home. They cannot come to school. Certainly, call in and let us know so that we can work with you and make sure students getting the materials that they need. But really, it's going to take all of us working together to open the school and keep it open for the duration of the school year. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mrs. Goldman, who's going to speak specifically about Leading Edge.
And I appreciate that Dr. Wood said specifically, but just keep in mind it's all in the works. So let's go to the next slide. So the first, what will quarter one look like? We are still going to be on trimesters, but you can still think in terms of quarter one as August through October fall break. We are going to try to make school feel as normal as possible, but with a lot of these adjustments that Dr. Wood talked about. So next slide, please. Yeah. So here's an example of what our classrooms might look like, but in all likelihood, our beloved group tables are going into storage, and we're going to bring back some single student desks. That's going to allow us to have more individualized spaces for students, also spaces that can be wiped down. Everything can be cleaned in the classroom. We anticipate with that 6-foot physical distancing that sort of 16 to 18 students can fit in the majority of our classroom. So that would be our cohort size. So if you think about, the group of students your child would be traveling with throughout the day, that would be approximate size. If we have those individual desks, we will likely not need those cool partition things that you see there, but we'll sort of work to make the space work as much as possible. Probably with Leading Edge, we are a small hallway. We'll have to do some staggering of students in and out of the hallway and all of those details, but we have not yet worked at all those details, so to be determined. Next slide.
Oh, sorry. I heard
it's okay. So you saw this slide already. It's the one that Dr. Wood showed us about shifts. So I want you to imagine that you're an A shift student. You come to school on Monday and Tuesday, and you will see all your classes in those 2 days. Some classes like expressions and PE and technology, you'll see once in that time, and some classes like ELA and social studies, which will be cord together as humanities or math and science, you'll get to see twice in that time. So you're going to get to see all of your teachers at least once in that Monday, Tuesday time. On Wednesday, you're at home, and it's actually going to be a chance for you to connect virtually with students in other cohorts and with teachers and with your production advisory group. And then on Thursday and Friday, if you're an A group kiddo, you will be at home working on the kind of work, not exactly like what you've seen in the last quarter, but at home specific tasks that are based on what you were doing when you were in the classroom and related to what you were doing in the classroom. Flip that if you're a B shift student at home on Mondays and Tuesdays and at school on Thursdays and Fridays. And if you decide that independent study is the right course of action for you and your family, you would be at home all of those days, but you would have access to teachers and classmates both after school and sometimes on that Wednesdays in a virtual setting. We're really thinking about what has worked from this previous quarter on our first attempt at distance learning, and I'll talk more about that, but really looking at the work that students are doing being able to be done, that learning being able to be done in any location, whether you're at school or at home, and kind of what we're calling location agnostic. And that's something that teachers are working really hard on right now. So we've talked about these 4 areas of planning. I'm going to address sort of our thoughts in each of these. So instructional plan for flexible learning is our first one. And there's a few different pieces, and some of these we've talked about already. Some of them were in the works before school closure happened, and some of them are brand new. But when we think about that term flexible, I want us to think about accessibility and relevant learning, whether you're at home or at school. So some of the things that you all have told us worked well in this first quarter of distance learning experiment were consistent weekly lesson format and Schoology posts, assignments that have at home and at school variations and directions that make them equally doable in both of those places. and really continuing to emphasize project-based, active, and relevant learning. And if I can say, getting even better at that in a distance learning format than we were in our first go around this last year. You know, we were sort of trying it on for size, but working with teachers just the last 2 weeks, they're excited to amp it up from what we saw in terms of more active, more relevant, more project-based. Leveraging technology. So we will be rolling out Chromebooks for every student. So every student at Leading Edge will have a school provided Chromebook. And what that's gonna do is that is gonna enable us to ensure that everybody has the technology that they need, but really look at how we flip our instruction to use the digital tools better and have in-person learning really represent things that, you know, we can only do face to face, and see how we can use the tech to enhance learning. Collaboration is huge at Leading Edge, so we're really looking at what are our options for digital collaboration tools. I actually spent a big chunk of today collaborating with some other folks on that topic, so we're looking at that. But this for Leading Edge, you know, we already have a very strong existing tech savviness among our students and among our families. So I want to encourage you that this does not mean that we're just handing kids computers and all they're going to do is, you know, look at a screen, but we're going to build on that tech savvy, build on their information literacy, and really hopefully use this to leverage technology to greater learning. Also under instructional plan for flexible learning, thinking about equity and support. So what our staff have been working on a lot in the last month is looking at how having access to this technology, but also having to think differently about learning, helps us have more universal tools for support. And the more universally we can provide support for our students that struggle, it also means the more universally we can provide challenge for our students that need that challenge. So we're excited that the technology is going to give us some of those opportunities. We are really thinking about how do we support our leading edgers in learning how to do at-home learning. So setting up some routines on that Wednesday where we take all the students through what does your at-home time look like, what does your at-school time look like, and really building their capacity to do that. We think that'll be beneficial for them this year, but also beneficial for them moving forward into college and high school and, you know, the world that we're all going to be living in. We will make sure there's student support times from teachers and other instructional staff. We'll make sure there's still small group learning. And we are piloting a concept called bonus time that I will talk about more in a minute. And then finally, this is sort of what I talked a little bit about at the last meeting last month, but also something we were planning to roll out that we just didn't get to talk to you about in March because the world happened. But for 7th and 8th graders, we are going to shift a little bit to a model much more like what they saw when they were in 6th grade, because we've had so much success with that. And what that looks like is combining language arts and social studies into a course called humanities, so that students, they still get ELA and they still get social studies. Neither one is going away, but they're going to be more intertwined, led by a single teacher that is qualified to teach both subjects. It also means they're going to get to meet every day for twice as much time, which we think will really help build that instructional foundation for all of their work. Similarly, for 7th and 8th grade, we'll see that with science and math, that they'll have these classes intertwined. So they'll get that daily practice for shorter periods of time, integrated with relevant and purposeful topics. So that's going to look a little bit different. It's one of those things that research is showing us it's a good idea. Other schools use a similar model, and we've seen such huge success with it in the way the 6th grade works. We also think that it will help in this crazy time for students to have fewer teachers that they have to focus on and learn their system. So I think that will help a lot. We're making sure that all teachers have a very clear sense of what is the most high leverage learning that they can present in any given course. And so, for example, if we're working on literacy skills, if we're working on reading skills, we want to make sure we're working on those in all of our courses and that all of our coursework supports those. We know that there's going to be some lessening amount of learning time just in the reality of this crazy time. So we want to make sure that we are hitting everything we can as powerfully as we can. Next slide, please. Oops. Related to this is summer learning, and I'm just going to do a little plug for summer learning. I know we all need a break, but I know our kids need a break, but this is one of those things that I really hope that parents and students, we can come together and understand that we want to stack the deck in favor of our students' success, and participation in some summer learning, even as little as 20 minutes a day. Actually, 20 minutes a day would be awesome. 20 to 30 minutes a day would be great. So there's a website that is on the slide. It's also linked on our Leading Edge website. So it's all organized around different quests, different challenges that students can engage in. There's digital and paper-based, there's enrichment and skill practice. There's kind of all the options that you can think of. Some of it's as simple as just reading books. Reading books is a very important thing you can do over the summer. We have some incentives. I talked to students about some incentives, but really what I've been saying to students, and I'll say to families as well, and I hope we can all share this language, is I gave it 3 Ps: purpose, perseverance, and play. It's a weird time. Having some purpose, having some daily tasks can really ground young people who maybe are feeling a little bit like, what am I supposed to do? It's summer and I don't have all my things. Perseverance, working towards something, giving students a chance to complete something can be very meaningful for their mental health. And then play and prizes. There's some fun options and there'll be some prizes at the end. So we hope that you can be talking to your students about how to stack the deck in favor of their success in the upcoming school year. That being said, there will still always be learning gaps. There are every year. There will be some this year as well. So we will start the year as we have the last 2 years with some assessments in math and reading, and we'll follow up with those again in January so that we can inform how we're pacing curriculum, how we're doing small group instruction to meet individual needs. I mentioned our Nights Learning Summer Quest. And we're going to be introducing at some point in the year, it's going to sort of roll out slowly, but something called bonus time, which will be some small group intervention, both in core classes, but also weekly in the schedule, to give kids a little bit of extra access to what they need. What they need might be some deeper academic instruction, but what they need might be some stress relief or some mindfulness or some organization. So we're just seeing the need to individualize a little bit more, and that's what we're hoping to address in that time. As we always do, there will continue to be a cross-curricular focus on the most critical standards. That's what makes project-based learning and cross-curricular learning so effective, and that is what we're all about at Leading Edge. And then finally, some of you have been asking about curriculum. We have adopted a new math curriculum, and we will continue to use iReady for math and reading. So we have a lot of support for teachers in terms of a base curriculum. Making sure that's not any of you texting me. Okay, it's not. Prioritizing connectedness. So we're really thinking about how are we going to reconnect students both at the beginning of the year and also throughout the year. If we're in shifts, if we're in a hybrid model, we're not going to see each other as much, more than we are now, but not as much. So we're really thinking about how we focus in that first month on reconnecting and having opportunities to reconnect. Some will be virtual, some in person. So playing with our options for that. And then the plan at this moment, though it may change, is if we have those virtual Wednesdays, if we have those work from home Wednesdays, it'll be a chance to connect virtually with students not in your cohort. So we want to make sure that's a priority as well. And again, to come soon, but we're also hoping to think about some creative ways to pair students across cohorts so they can still connect virtually through their work. Reconnecting families. Our hope is to continue with clear and consistent communication, continue with opportunities to support families in how you understand and support student learning. And so thinking about like having some parent nights to help you understand, what are my kids supposed to be doing? I get that question a lot. And then finally, this is I have an idea and I would love for some community members to step forward and say, yes, I'm on this. But I would love to look at how we as adults in the community are supporting each other as parents. Some of you that have known me for a few years know that the like pivotal turning point of my last 3 years was the parent support groups that I joined when my son was born. And I feel like this is a time when we as parents can support each other. So if you have thoughts or interest in helping me spearhead that, that would be lovely. Mental health supports will continue to be a big focus. We're going to continue to have our production time or our homeroom time where we implement community circles in some way, whether virtual or in person. some of our bonus time interventions might also support mental health needs. And then we're hoping that as we figure out how you all are going to select, or we in combination with you all are going to select which shift, that might actually alleviate some anxiety for families and for students who are looking at maybe not your family of origin, but the group of families that have become your bubble over this time, that a little bit of lessening the anxiety around returning to school. So hopefully that's a fingers crossed one. Next slide, maybe last slide, I don't know. And then finally, ensuring health and safety. And this is where hopefully if you're hearing all 5 of these from all 5 academies, they all sound mostly the same, because this is where we are really just, we're going with public health guidelines, and we're taking those public health guidance and doing what they say, you know. So we have ordered paper masks and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of hand sanitizer. We'll provide cloth masks for students and staff, and training students on regular hand washing and hygiene. Students, if you're listening, you got to come join our little student committee that's going to help create the public relations side of that. I really want your help. You guys know that I am not the best at branding, so I need your help. We will continue to have processes for sick students and staff, temperature screenings at home and at school, but also we're really looking at how small of a cohort of students can we have interacting together over the course of a day. And the nature of Leading Edge is pretty small if we're able to. So, you know, exact details to come, but we're really looking at limiting the amount of in-person interaction. And then of course, regular sanitation and all of the things that go with that. I imagine something along the lines of when students come in, they hand sanitize or wash their hands, they wipe down their desks, those sorts of things. So just some ideas on there.
So,
and then I get back to Dr. Wood.
Back to me. So hopefully what you heard from Mrs. Goldman is that really our intent is to plan with you as part of the full community. So you've been filling out surveys for us. We appreciate you taking time to do that. You'll probably be getting some more. We mentioned some reopening committees, and we're always looking for a parent volunteer or 2 for these committees as well. So we have health and safety, instructional support, facilities. Facilities is about figuring out where the furniture goes in the room. And then we have the student leadership community, which is what Mrs. Goldman just mentioned. So for parents, if you're interested in one of the first 3, just send an email to Mrs. Goldman and she can connect you with the right person. But the last one, that student leadership committee, is really about the third red section, the Student Developed Public Health Campaign. So I was a middle school teacher for 10 years. I am a middle school parent now. I think we all know that middle schoolers listen best to middle schoolers more than they listen to adults. So we have an opportunity for students to really work together on figuring out how we're going to communicate our reopening plans to students through things like PSAs, which are short videos like commercials, graphic design projects, and other activities. So students, you received an email from me yesterday letting you know how you can sign up for that committee, and we'd love to see you there. If you're interested, just fill out the Google form that's in your email. But ultimately, whatever we're coming up with, it's about helping everyone in our community understand that we're only going to reopen and stay open if we really take time to care and support each other. And we're kind of launching off this green graphic to the right, which was something that was developed by a PFAA student. That really is going to take all of us working together as, you know, one voice, one school, one planet, one community to reopen in a safe and healthy manner. So what's the timeline look like? So we started this planning in early May, so we've been figuring out a lot of things as guidelines are developing. Mid-May to mid-June, we've been having community discussions like the one tonight. We're working on summer implementation, you know, kind of the next 2 weeks. So things like, you know, students participating in summer learning, finalizing our plans, we're ordering desks, all sorts of exciting things. You'll notice there's a little gap in the timeline here from the 30th of June to the 15th of July. That's because we're closing for 2 weeks so that everyone can take a much needed rest so that we're ready to ramp up for the beginning of next school year. And we'll be back together around July 15th. You'll notice on the launch for 2021, the first bullet says final decision on July 27th. So there's probably parents out there right now saying, just tell me exactly what next school year is going to look like. I join you in that request and that call. Unfortunately, though, we can't quite tell you. Part of why we're waiting to make some final decisions about what next school year is going to look like, including exactly what the shifts are going to look like, how the staggered start times are going to work, et cetera, is that we're waiting on 3 pieces of information. First of all, we're watching what's happening with coronavirus and also recognizing that the guidance we have from public health may shift. Secondly, we're looking at what other schools are doing. There might be an innovative idea we haven't thought of yet. And so we're trying to kind of calibrate with other schools, not just in Natomas, but in the larger Sacramento region. And then our third area is that right now, the state budget is pending in the legislature. You might have seen that on the news. One of the pieces that's in the state budget that's very technical, but it shapes what we do, is how schools are going to, how the legislature is going to ask schools to implement distance learning and something called instructional minutes for the coming school year. And so that may shape how we exactly do these shifts. So we kind of have to wait for that piece of information. So all of that to say, please stay tuned. We plan on having another parent meeting about mid to late July. And then around July 27th, you'll be getting an email asking you to choose things like A shift or B shift. That'll also be the time to sign up for independent study. And we may have some other requests of you at that time. So just stay tuned. So just to close out, we really see this as an opportunity to model stability, consistency, and responsibility for our school community and our Natomas community. Earlier this evening, you probably got an email from me about testing in Natomas. We now have COVID-19 testing available. This is one of our activities as a school. We have to be extremely wise models of what all of us need to do to model responsibility in order for us to come back together. And so just to close out, I encourage all of you, we talked about this in May, being really prepared for change. So stay connected. I think you've heard me say half a dozen times, and probably Mrs. Goldman too, stay tuned, check your email, watch for that survey. We'll be sending you information as soon as we have information. Plan for personal flexibility. As we started saying in May, this is going to be a dynamic school year, probably more dynamic than the one we had last year. And so hopefully, in the next month or two, coronavirus really dies down and it kind of goes away. But that's not what the public health officials are expecting at this point, based on what they're seeing happening in other communities. So we need to be prepared for a period of time where we're going to be doing hybrid learning, or we might be doing distance learning. And so using the summer to make preparations in your own life for that flexibility. The third part, really helping your child plan for COVID-19. I know there are middle school students out there that have more or less not left their home since mid-March. We need you to take them out. We need you to take them shopping. We need you to get them used to not touching everything or keeping their hands in their pocket or wearing a mask. For a middle school parent, this might sound a little juvenile, but I know from my own middle school child, we had to do some activities of going out into the community just so he could get used to what this is going to look like. I joke, but I'm half serious about taking shopping. I have to give a plug. I live in West Sacramento. I have to give a plug to my neighborhood grocery store, The Nugget. They've been doing masks and physical distancing since mid-April. So it's a good opportunity if you want to see what an environment looks like where everyone's wearing a mask and trying to navigate physical distancing. And then the last one, getting involved. So we'll have some opportunities for potentially you to be part of reopening committees. Also, if you have a bachelor's degree or someone who has a bachelor's degree who's interested in substitute teaching, we're trying to grow our substitute pool. We recognize we might have some staff members who get sick in this process, and we're going to probably need more substitutes than we've had in the past. And so we need to get ready for that. We're also looking for some parents who might want to be regular volunteers. So it's a little different than volunteering we've had in the past, where people are kind of coming and going on campus. We're probably not going to be able to do that, but maybe you're a parent who wants to volunteer, Mondays and Tuesdays to help with traffic flow while we're doing temperature screening on during drop off or that sort of thing. So if you're interested in either of those, just reach out to Mrs. Goldman and we can kind of get you set up. So just to close out, a Sir Ken Robinson quote we talked about in May, but it's still true today. We can't predict the future, but we can help shape it. And so that's what we're trying to do by sharing these plans with you early and often and helping you understand how things may adjust so that you can get ready and your student can get ready as well. So with that, I'm going to switch it over to questions. When you signed up for this workshop, you got a little link to a Google form where I know some of you have been posing questions. If you have any tonight, you can use that link. If you can't find that link, you can also in your browser go to bit.ly/NCSLE for Leading Edge 2020. And you can fill out the Google form there as well. And so Dr. Ellis, I know has that form open, is going to let Mrs. Goldman and I know what questions we have so far. Oh, you're muted, Dr. Ellis.
Because I always know that I have to unmute myself before I start talking.
It's to the best of us.
So there are only 2 questions at this time. The first question is Leading Edge still planning to offer extracurricular activities such as taiko, drumming, and orchestra in addition to sports?
So I can start with that one, and Dr. would jump in if I misspeak. So orchestra has been sort of a year-to-year when available collaboration with PFAA. For next year, the collaboration that we are planning on is actually with choir, and so they're currently looking at an opportunity for Leading Edge and other Academy students possibly to join the NCS All Choir, which will meet in a ninth period, which is sort of after the end of the school day on the days that students are on campus. The details of that are to be determined, but Dr. Gandhi and I are working on figuring out how to make that work. That's something that we're really excited about. With regards to taiko, clubs in general, and sports, we're really taking those one day at a time and looking at what options we have. So no decisions have been made right now. Mr. Shane, our athletic director, is heavily engaged in the process of following the discussion on high school and middle school sports. He is meeting with our league that we are a part of at the end of this month, and currently thinking about like, how can we slowly open sports, you know, with non-contact and those sorts of things. So really all the options are still on the table. No decisions have been made. Similar with clubs. We know that part of what makes school are those other things. And so certainly where we find ways to bring them back in ways that are safe, we're very excited to do so, but there's a lot of question marks still around that.
And just to add to what Mrs. Goldman said, you know, tomorrow or this evening, if I can get myself organized enough, you're going to get an email with the links to all of these presentation materials. And one of the links is to the Sacramento County Public Health Guidance. And you'll notice that as of today, they're actually recommending that things like choir and orchestra are actually done as virtual as you possibly can. Remember, we talked about respiratory droplets being the primary means of transmission of the coronavirus. And when you sing or you blow air through a wind instrument, that's actually a great transmission vector for coronavirus. So we're trying to explore how we could do those virtual or maybe outdoors with large spaces between students. Similarly, on the sports front, you'll probably see on, if you follow the Natomas Unified Facebook page, that I think it's tomorrow night's board meeting, they're going to be talking about sports and what sports might look like for the fall. And really at this point, it's about individual students training for sports and probably looking at sport activities where they can limit the amount of contact and interaction between students. So, you know, similar to what Mrs. Goldman said, this is all still very much up for figuring out, and we're trying to figure it out. Our second question.
Would it be safer to do 1 week in and 1 week distance learning model so as to limit the spread of the virus from surfaces?
That's a great question. We talked about that. We actually ended up looking at 4 different models of shift-based learning. And one of the second runner-up was the every other week model. The reason why we did not move in that particular direction, though, is that we noticed during distance learning that we needed to check in with students more frequently. And as a staff group, we all agreed that we need to see kids at least once a week. When we go an entire week, especially with our younger learners, so K-5 and middle school students, they tend to not engage until they're kind of interacting and working with an adult. And so we decided that the double day shift was kind of the Goldilocks version of the shifts. It wasn't, you know, the every other day or twice a day, you know, morning, afternoon shifts, but yet it wasn't really the weeks either. And part of why we have that Wednesday cleaning is that it allows for that deep cleaning between the 2 cohorts. Even on the every other week model, we were going to have basically a Monday cleaning day so that we could clean between the 2 cohorts.
A few additional questions have come in. When will our school provide distance learning for students during summer break?
So there are summer learning options available now. It's not going to be distance learning in the sense of summer school. They're all in like individual. You can do them at your what's the word I'm looking for? Like on your own pace, self-paced. That's the word I'm looking for. And so if you go to the Leading Edge website, le.natomascharter.org, and you scroll down to our news items, I believe there is only one news item, and it says Summer Learning Quest, and you will find everything you need to know about summer learning options there. If you are rising 7th or rising 8th grader, so you're going to be a 7th or 8th grader next year, they're all available to you. If you're coming in as a 6th grader, there's a few that won't be available to you this summer, but there are still plenty that are. And like, as I said, they're all self-paced and sort of choose your own adventure would be the way I would describe it. And there's some motivation built in there, and there's some fun, really silly videos of me with a sword built in there, and Miss Prettle with I don't know, lots of costumes. It's so if you have any questions, you're welcome to email me, agoldman@natomascharter.org, and I can help you navigate that. But it's all there.
And as a middle school parent follow-up, so I'll take my executive director hat off and put my middle school parent hat on. We're actually using it. Our son's actually been using it. This is his second week. So we kind of set up a little weekly checklist that he's working through, and he's an incoming 7th grader. So he's doing a little bit of iReady math each day, a little bit of iReady reading each day. He's working on reading a book and then some science activities. And we structured it very similar to how we had distance learning structured in our home, so that, at least for the time that we're going to be based at home, which is most of summer, we're hoping to maybe go on a little hike somewhere. But he basically, as part of his daily routine, kind of gets up, brushes his teeth, takes care of whatever he needs to take care of, and then does his daily distance learning that usually takes him until about lunch each day. And then, the idea is that he finishes at the end of the week. And as Mrs. Goldman mentioned, there we go. There's basically like a logging activity that students are doing, and they log on Fridays, or he logs on Fridays. And then that is actually what is used for that sort of like prize and participation aspect.
So we're at 5:45, and there's a couple of questions that I can combine together.
Sure.
And I think we'll be able to get through all of them.
Okay,
So
awesome.
the first one is, what if we still don't want to risk sending our child? Will there be extra precautions for students who have higher health issues?
So the precautions that we're putting in place on campus are really designed to support all students. And so that's why we're talking about students attending shifts, so that we can have physical distancing, asking all students to wear masks, doing education around hygiene and that sort of thing. If a family, though, based on their family situation, feels like they need to take an extra level of precaution, then really that's where independent study is probably the best option. And choosing to be on independent study, initially, I'm going to recommend just a quarter at a time, because you might want to find out, what's really going to work for your child or not. We're also trying to recognize that, we might have some families who start on independent study and a week or two and realize, oh, this isn't really working for us, and want to come back to that site-based shift model and trying to build some supports around that.
And so you touched on these next questions in that answer, but I'll have you elaborate a bit more. Sure. If we start off with independent studies, are we locked into that for the whole year? And if my child were to choose a schedule, would they still have work for the days they are not in school?
So the first part, you will not be locked in for the entire school year. Our goal is to do it quarter by quarter. That way it gives us some stability of knowing who to expect in which space, but also giving parents the flexibility. Our goal is also to work with families that, if you chose distance learning and it's a complete disaster, that, we can help you get your student right back on track as quickly as possible. I've already forgot the second question.
The other one was, what happens the days my student is not in school? And the answer is, they will definitely have work to do. Yeah. So the idea is that we want to think about the days that we still want, and we need your help, parents, in communicating this message. We still want students to think about being in school 5 days a week. They're just only at school 2 days a week.
And so add on that, it's a good opportunity, especially with middle school students and high school students at PFA, to talk about college, because really what we're proposing here is a college-like format where there's going to be activities that you're going to be doing independently, or with some, virtual coaching from teachers or staff members that then you need in order for that face-to-face time together. Similarly, something that will be different this coming school year that we did not have in the previous school years is students will actually be assessed and graded based on their learning activities that they're doing both at school and at home. So for some of you, that might be a little bit of a carrot or a stick, I guess, depending on your child, to kind of talk to them a little bit about.
And so with the being locked in for the whole year, that's both independent study and there's another question. If my student chooses a schedule A/B, will that be their schedule for the whole year? Or will they be able to switch later in the year? And you were saying that it's quarter by quarter.
So independent studies quarter by quarter, we are planning on the A/B. We hadn't, until someone posed this question, I really thought about it, but I'm going to imagine we're going to want A/B to be maybe for longer than just a quarter, just because we have to, one, we want to take everyone's requests, but then two, we have to create equally balanced sections. So like if 75% of the world signs up for A, we're not going to be able to guarantee 75% of the world A. We're probably going to have to look at some sort of little mini lottery like model. And our primary goal would be to keep siblings together. And if you have siblings that maybe they're all on leading edge or they're leading edge PFA and STAR, the idea would be that a family only has one shift. A family would not have multiple shifts.
A question just came in. Will students have to wear a mask during PE? I'm wondering because my child has asthma.
So no, PE would probably be an activity where they're 6 feet apart because they're physically moving. And all of the current public health orders are about when you're exercising, you do not need to wear a mask. We'll be working with Mr. Shane and Mr. Farwig to have outdoor activities for PE. Now realize every fall we have wildfire smoke days. Obviously we have rain and other things that happen too. So on the indoor days, they might not be as active and they might need to wear their masks. It might be more of a learning about sports than actually doing the sports, but we'll kind of be working on that with Mr. Farwig and Mr. Shane.
Okay, so we are at 5:50. So would you like to take one more question?
Yeah, we can take one more.
Will school hours still be the same?
Ooh, we don't know. We're figuring that out. Roughly, our goal is to keep them as same as possible. But one of the pieces that, remember I mentioned that in that waiver that we're waiting about instructional minutes in the governor's legislature plan, depending on how much support we figure we need to provide to our independent study students, we may have to adjust or shorten the school day a little bit. But as of today, our goal is to keep the bell schedule and the times basically the same.
Will classes still be credit or non-credit, or C or non-C?
No, classes will go back to being on our normal leading edge grade scale, the 1 through 5.5. And this is something that we already started communicating to students back when we saw them a couple weeks ago. And another thing that families, we will definitely need your help in perpetuating this communication. But we are going back to being assessed on all your assignments. Obviously, we're working to develop policies and procedures that will help students in maximizing their learning and not hinder their learning in this crazy cuckoo time. But no, we will be going back to our traditional grading system, traditional for leading edge.
So that ends our questions. We were able to make it through all of them. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, leading edge parents. We appreciate you and students. We appreciate you being with us this evening and hearing a little bit about our plans for the upcoming school year. We recognize it's a little different, it's a little dynamic, and we appreciate your flexibility and understanding. And stay tuned as we have more information. We'll be sharing it with you. Anything else, everyone? All right. So let me find my Zoom meeting here.